Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, it is our second golf preview of the week. Today, we're going to be breaking down LIV Greenbrier. We are going to be breaking down the course itself, the Old White course at the Greenbrier Resort. And then we're going to be trying to figure out what golfers here in the LIV field can, in fact, win this golf tournament or help you win some money in DFS. We're going to be breaking it down from both standpoints here on this episode. Now, I mentioned it is our second preview of the week. If you missed the first one, we previewed the Wyndham Championship yesterday. Either check out the channel on YouTube or check out the episode feed on audio form. You're going to want to check that out. I have actually got a little bit of local knowledge because I am from Greensboro. So the Wyndham Championship coming back to Greensboro, I do get to give kind of a different perspective that I don't get to give for every PGA Tour golf tournament. Anyway, check out that preview if you haven't already. But today we are going to break down everything LIV Greenbrier. So if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. If you are listening on audio form, please rate and review. Again, helps me out a lot, shows me a lot of support. It just really helps me grow the YouTube channel and the podcast feed, and I really do appreciate it. All right, that's enough for the introduction. Let's go ahead and start our preview of LIV Greenbrier. Brad breaking down the course itself. All right, so LIV Greenbrier is going to be played at the Old White TPC. I do not know if it still has the TPC attached to it, but it is known as the Old White course at the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs, Virginia. The Greenbrier Resort is actually like a huge complex, and this is one of many golf courses that are there. But apparently this is the nice one because this one's the one that all the big tournaments get played at. Anyway, the Old White TPC plays as a par 72, and it plays at about 7,200 yards. That's where it's going to be at about this week. The scorecard that I could find had it at about 7,300, but everything that I've seen indicated from LIV is either in the high 71s or the low 7,200s. So I'm going to guess that it's about at 7,200 yards this week. It is a par 70, and it is not a particularly long par 70. It's got a lot of par fours. The par threes have some length to them. So pretty much what you're looking at is the par fours are really kind of below average length. There's a lot of, not dissimilar to what we're going to see at Sedgefield this week, there's a lot of par fours that are in the 400 to 450 yard range. So kind of being successful at, kind of these shorter golf courses, successful with these shorter par fours is going to pay big dividends this week. Now, the Greenbrier is a classical design. It was originally designed in 1914 by Charles McDonald, and it's, by classical design, I mean, it's just your standard run-of-the-mill Parkland American golf course, right? Like it's going to be tree lined on both sides of the fairways. And many holes here are actually remakes of holes that were, more famous at, a Scottish or a British venue. Like there's hole number 8, which is a remake of the famous Redan hole. There's another hole that is a remake of the 11th at St. Andrews. I do not remember which one it is here, but it's a par 3. No, hole number 15 here. That's the one that's the remake of 11 at St. Andrews. But pretty much the notable features that you're going to need to know here is, yes, the fairways are tree lined, but it's not the densest tree line fairways you'll ever see. This is not as narrow as, say, a Colonial Country Club or a Harbor Town, but it is going to be important to keep the ball in the fairway and keep out of tree trouble. But the trees really represent the only hazards. There really hasn't been a whole lot of teeth when the PGA Tour tournament has been played here. The greens themselves are very small, and they are bent grass greens. So I do think that it will be important to, when you're looking at putters, have guys that are, good at bent grass. That there's definitely an art to that. Now, as mentioned earlier, I did lose this page somehow. So I'm pulling it back up on YouTube. But what you're going to see is the winning score here. When the PGA played an event here, they played an event called the Greenbrier Classic from 2010 to 2019, and then it was kind of taken out of the rotation. But the winners here tended to win with pretty low scores. Like this tended to be a fairly easy event. The winning score actually was never higher than -10 and never lower than -22. So this tended to be a little bit of a birdie fest. And what you can look at when you just look at the winners is you see a lot of guys who are not necessarily super long off the tee, not known as being bombers, but guys who are known as being ball strikers. Stuart Appleby, Scott Stallings, Ted Potter Jr., Jonas Blixt, Angel Cabrera, Danny Lee. Xander Schauffele, Kevin Na, and Joaquin Niemann are all the winners here. And even when you look at the runners-up, it's a lot of guys who are not known for distance, such as Kevin Kisner, Tom Hoagie, Kelly Craft. So I really don't think distance is going to be a super huge determining factor this week when just looking at that. Now, with LIV kind of having limited strokes gain data, one thing we can do is we can kind of look and see who has played well here in the past to kind of get a vibe of, kind of what's going to go down here at this course this week. And so if you look at the golfers on all the PGA Tour that have played well at the Greenbrier in the past, again, you're looking at a lot of guys who are just known for being ball strikers. These aren't short gamers. These aren't like your up and down kings. These aren't your bombers. They're guys who play the fairway and green game. They hit fairways, they hit greens, and then they try to make the birdie putts. It comes as no surprise to me that Scotty Scheffler, even though he only played here in 2019 when he was probably like 22 years old, is one of the top guys in strokes gained here because he's like the best ball striker on the planet. Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland have also played well here. Tony Finau has played well here. Notably, among the LIV guys, Joaquin Niemann has a win here. Sebastian Munoz has played well here. Kevin Na has a win here, has played well here. And then Harold Varner III has played well here also. But again, if you just look at the names of the guys who had played well here, it's just a lot of ball strikers. Now, if you narrow it down to just the LIV field, the top 5 in terms of strokes gained at the Greenbrier have been Joaquin Niemann, Sebastian Munoz, Kevin Na, Harold Varner III, and Pat Perez. It definitely stands out to me. It's pretty cool this week that we have the ability to do this, and I'm using the tools at rickrungood.com because LIV does not feature a lot of courses that have hosted PGA Tour events, and they don't really feature a whole lot of detailed strokes gained data as well. So being able to pull this up should definitely be a big time help this week when it comes to making bets or producing lineups. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out was that LIV has given us very minimal stats. Like, they don't give us strokes gained. What they do give us is they do give us driving accuracy. They do give us driving distance. They do give us scoring average, birdies, greens in regulation, all that stuff. So I do think it's worth looking at a little bit of the LIV stats that we've got. And I do think driving accuracy is going to be important this week. It's going to be important to find fairways because you want to stay out of tree trouble. You want to give yourself the best chance possible to hit the green and give yourself a look at birdie. So the top 5 in driving accuracy on LIV this season has been Henrik Stenson, Abraham Ancer, Richard Bland, Paul Casey, and Taylor Gooch. And then if you look at birdies on LIV this season, the top guys in birdies have been Dustin Johnson, Cam Smith, Brooks Koepka, Taylor Gooch, and Patrick Reed. I think it's worth noting that the only guy who has been a crossover for both of them just so happened to be Taylor Gooch. He's the guy that kind of fits the formula this week for finding fairways, finding greens, finding birdies. So to kind of summarize all that up, the Greenbrier, shorter course, positional golf course. I would prefer to have guys who have good history at shorter positional golf courses. They're small bent grass greens, so I'm kind of targeting very accurate players off the tee and on approach who also have an ability to putt on bent grass greens. Now, let's take a look at the DraftKings board and see if we can find some guys who fit that. All right, so I'm looking here at the DraftKings board for the LIV Greenbrier, and the betting board looks pretty much the same. But I've got to say, if there's any week to kind of fade the top of the board, I think this week might be the week. So we're at a very interesting spot for the LIV schedule. So there's a lot of guys that are on the LIV tour that pretty much their entire lives revolve around trying to win major championships. Here's looking at you, Brooks Koepka. So pretty much, we're past the major season in golf right now. The 4 majors for 2023 have already been played. So this tournament is not played in preparation for a major. It's not played in preparation for a FedEx Cup. This tournament, if you want to go out and win it, it's going to be probably because of your own self-determination and like self-motivation. There's not really going to be like something pushing you to succeed at this tournament. And that's something that can't be quantified. It's something that can't be measured. But I do think it's something that's worth mentioning because this is a different part of the LIV schedule. Now, one thing, when you're constructing DFS lineups for LIV, one thing you always got to remember is that the field's only 48 players, and everybody's playing 6 golfers. So everybody is playing 12.5% of the field. The entire pool of players averages 12.5% ownership. So, you got to be willing to eat a little bit of ownership, but it also means that you can't just play all of your guys that are going to be the super logical, super highly owned plays. Now, also, you also don't need like the top 6 in order to win in LIV DFS. You just have to have guys outperform their position. So one thing I love to do is just kind of look at where their salaries are at and just say like, hey, can this guy outperform the 40th salary? Can this guy outperform the 35th salary? So, that is something that's worth looking into. Like, for instance, Sewon Kim, I don't want to pick on the guy, but he hasn't finished in the top 40 in LIV all season. So I don't think he would make for a particularly great pick because, he's not really outperforming his salary by a whole lot. Even though his salary is dead last, he is coming in here dead last. It almost makes me wonder if LIV wanted Siwoo Kim and they ended up with Sewon Kim. But anyway, that's beside the point. So when we're constructing our lineups this week, I don't mind fading the top of the board. But if there was one player at the top of the board that I was going to play or that I was going to bet on, it would probably be Bryson DeChambeau. So if you take a look at Bryson's stats, and I'm looking here at rickrungood.com, at Royal Liverpool, a course that some would say did not fit his game well at all, he made the cut, and he was really good off the tee. He was really good around the green, oddly, but he was really bad on approach, really bad with the putter. The approach play is not typical for Bryson, but I would assume that he had to have put a ball out of bounds or something like that to have his approach number be that bad. But if you look at the other majors, the ones we have numbers for, the ball striking numbers have been tremendous. He's been really good off the tee. He's been really good on approach. The putter can let him down at times. And so if you can just get an average putting week out of Bryson DeChambeau, that could kind of mitigate his weakness because the Greenbrier has smaller greens. So, they're generally going to be shorter putts. You're not going to have as many putts that are going to be super challenging across a smaller green. Now, another thing that I like, and some people might point to this as a disadvantage for Bryson this week, but driver's not going to be in Bryson's hand a whole lot here at the Greenbrier. When else was it not in his hand a whole lot? LIV Valderrama, second place. That was a short, narrow golf course that Bryson was able to pick apart by going driving iron off the tee quite a lot. And I think that's something he could do this week at another kind of narrow, shorter golf course. And I think that, it might not let Bryson kind of exhibit his biggest strength with the driver, but that is still a way that he has a path to win a golf tournament by going with the driving iron off the tee. All right. Now, other guys at the top, I think Cam Smith and Brooks Koepka are always solid plays on LIV. I think they're significantly the two most talented guys. Their motivations can be questioned, but I still think at the same time, both these guys can sleepwalk through this tournament and come in 12th place. Brooks just playing his fairways, greens game, translates well anywhere, will translate well here. Cam Smith, the short game wizard, no matter what trouble he gets himself into, he's going to be able to get himself out of it, translates well here. So I think both of them have an incredibly high floor, but I just don't know if they're going to have the inner motivation to go out and win this week. Now, the guy at the top that I'm totally comfortable full fading is Dustin Johnson. And I might get burned doing that, but I'm totally okay with it. The missed cut at the Open reeks of disengagement for me. He was playing some of his best golf leading into the Open Championship, and he just blew it all away. Like, he had an okay round one, wasn't totally out of it, but round two started off poorly, just became totally disengaged, mailed it in, shot 81, finished in 155th place. He was worse than Justin Thomas at the Open. That's saying something. So I'm just totally fine with full fading Justin Thomas. I don't think he's all there. I don't think his game is all there. If it burns me, fine, but I'd rather play other guys here. And one of the other guys that I would rather play, and I think this guy is going to be super chalky, is Taylor Gooch. So if you'll recall, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I was not super high on playing Taylor Gooch earlier in the LIV season because I just figured like, hey, a guy like Taylor Gooch, he's won twice already. What are the chances he's going to win a third time? Well, guess what? He did. And so I think that was kind of short-sighted of me because in LIV, you only have to beat 47 other golfers. It's not the same math as winning 3 times on the PGA Tour. It's just easier like as a feat to do because you have to beat less guys. So if he can win it 3 times in a season, then he can win 4 times in a season. I don't have anything against playing him for that reason now that I think about the math behind it. And I got to say, I think this course sets up really well for him. He tends to play well at shorter courses. He tends to play well at courses that are kind of a little bit more narrow off the tee, like the win at Valderrama. If you're going to be comparing the Greenbrier to one course on the LIV schedule, I would probably pick Valderrama to be that comp course among just the LIV courses. So I really do think Taylor Gooch is in a great spot. I think everybody else knows he's in a great spot, though, and so I think he's going to be super highly owned in DFS. What I think is going to be super common this week is a full fade of the 10K range in DFS, and a lot of people starting off their lineup with Gooch and Neiman. Why would you start off with Joaquin Niemann, you ask? Well, he won the Greenbrier Classic the last time it was played on the PGA Tour in 2019. He has a win at this event. I believe he won it by like 6 or 7 strokes. So he dominated the last time he played this course. His finishes on LIV have been trending in the right direction. Made the cut at the U.S. Open. Missed the cut at the Open Championship with a bad round 1, but he did try to piece it back together in round 2. So I'm kind of willing to forgive the missed cut at the Open. I like the fact that he's got the win here, and I like the fact that his finishes on LIV have been trending in the right direction this season. I think a lot of people are going to start their lineups Gooch, Niemann this week, so I'm totally fine with playing one of them, or if you play both of them, find somewhere else to be different, which is totally a possibility. So if Gooch and Niemann are going to be the popular plays, who's the pivot in the 9K range? I like Harold Varner III. Old HV3 tends to play his best golf at shorter positional golf courses. And the reason why is kind of weird. He is fairly long off the tee, but he can also be fairly wayward off the tee with the driver. But at a shorter positional golf course, the driver's out of his hand. So there's really like two paths to like HV3 like playing well. You get like he did with his 4th place finish at Tulsa, or like his historical finishes at RBC Heritage or at the Charles Schwab Challenge, where the driver's out of his hand and he plays well. Or you get the win like he had at LIV DC, where the driver's in his hand, but there's really not much of a punishment for missing anyway. So I think those are kind of HV3's 2 paths to victory, and this one definitely falls into one of those paths. Also, if you're looking for a little bit of a geographical edge, I suppose a guy who tends to play his best golf in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, just a few hours up the road to West Virginia, I don't think that's that big of a stretch. It's not like, he's driving up to like the Northeast or the Pacific Northwest or anything like that. I think there's not a bad geographical comfort level here for HV3. That this is a similar parkland course that he's probably seen all his life. Now, another guy in the 9K range that I like a lot is Sebastian Munoz. So Sebastian Munoz, everything is trending in the right direction for him. He was T4 at LIV DC, T49 at the US Open, 4th at LIV Valderrama, 21st at LIV London, and oh, by the way, he popped up as one of the best players in this field at the Greenbrier Classic when it was on the PGA Tour. So good recent form, good course history, checks those 2 boxes. LIV Valderrama, which I said was one of my favorite comp courses, 4th place there, checks the comp course box. Sebastian Munoz, definitely one of my favorites this week, and I think he's a very live bet to win this tournament. If I had to bet between anybody near the top of the board to win this tournament, I think it's a little bit too easy to go with Smith and Koepka. I would probably be betting on DeChambeau and then going all the way down to Sebastian Munoz if I were to be betting outright winners this week. I think those are the 2 guys that are probably the most likely to win this golf tournament. Now, heading down into the 8K range, there's a few guys that stand out to me, first of which is Kevin Na. Kevin Na, winner at the Greenbrier Classic when it was on the PGA Tour, checks that box. Has also been pretty good recently on LIV. 6th place at LIV DC, 27th at Valderrama, definitely leaves a little bit to be desired, and then 11th at LIV London. But let's dissect that 27th place at Valderrama real quick. He was really good in round 1, was okay in round 2, terrible in round 3. So I'm willing to forgive Kevin Na for one bad round at Valderrama for his kind of trending in the right direction recent form, if you take away that one round, and for his course history at the Greenbrier. I really think Kevin Na makes sense for a really good play this week. He's a little pricier than I would have thought. I really do think DraftKings made the pricing on LIV a little bit tougher this week. I think they definitely beefed up the 8K range from where it had been in previous weeks. Now, the guy that I think is going to be the 8K chalk is Henrik Stenson. Now, if you are watching or listening to this podcast, you probably know the answer to this question. But care to guess who the low LIV golfer was at the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool? It was Henrik Stenson, T13. No other LIV golfer did better than that. And that's saying something. It's quite impressive, honestly. But I really think in terms of motivation factor, Henrik Stenson's got a lot to play for. When he went to LIV, he was removed of his Ryder Cup captaincy. And I think he really wants to prove a point that that was disrespectful and that he deserved that position. And what better way to do it by going out and winning a golf tournament? And so I think when you look at his recent form with the T4 in DC, the T6 in London, with the T13 at the Open Championship, with his incredible motivation, and then also with the course fit for the fact that he's just an accurate golfer who's been an elite ball striker for the last 3 months, I think Henrik Stenson has everything going for him. I think a lot of other people understand this as well. And so I think he will be super popular this week. The last guy in the 8K range that I do want to mention is Abraham Ancer. So Abraham Ancer started off his season, if I'm being totally honest, pretty bad. Like, he missed the cut at the DP World Tour event that he played in January, and then immediately won the Saudi Invitational on the Asian Tour. And things were looking up for him, right? First start of LIV for the season at Mayakoba, T15, not bad. But then everything started to go down. 24th, 26th, 39th, brought it back with an 11th, almost dead last at LIV Singapore, 23rd at LIV Tulsa, missed the cut badly at the PGA. And then T42 at LIV DC. So, he started off his season with the win at the Saudi International, almost the high of highs, and it was just like going steadily downhill to that point. Well, he really turned it around at LACC, gained strokes in the ball striking categories. The putter let him down, but he did make the cut and come in 54th. His last 2 finishes on LIV, trending in the right direction, 19th and 11th. Made the cut at Royal Liverpool, lost 4 strokes putting. The putter let him down and came in 49th place. If he's able to keep up this form ball striking and just be okay with the putter, I think he's going to be in really good shape. I also think when you think about Abraham Ancer, you think about shorter positional golf courses because he's not long off the tee, but he is very accurate. So I really think that Abraham Ancer is in a really good spot this week here at the Greenbrier. Now, looking down in the 7K range, Mark Leishman, if you care about recent form, would be the guy to play. He recently came in T2 at LIV London, which was by far his best LIV performance of the season. That's a course that compares somewhat to the Greenbrier. It's certainly not wide. It's certainly a Parkland design. It's not a links design or anything like that. And I just like the fact that, like, he's showing some signs of life here. Like, we know this is a very talented golfer. His start of the season on LIV had not been good. I really like the fact that he's coming in off of that T2 heading into here at the Greenbrier. Now, Pat Perez is probably going to be pretty popular this week because he's a guy that routinely outperforms his salary. Like I was talking about earlier, his last 4 starts on LIV, T18, T18, T23, T6. And oh, by the way, he popped up when we looked at the stats in terms of course history here at the Greenbrier as being one of the best guys in this event. So course history, recent form, reasonable price. I think a lot of people are going to be on Pat Perez this week, and I'm totally okay being one of those guys who's on him. Now, I have nothing to quantify it. No data, nothing to back this up. But I think this is a pretty good setup for Anirban Lahiri. I really do. He's a guy who does play well at shorter positional golf courses. He came in T11th last time at LIV London. I just kind of have this gut feeling Anirban Lahiri is going to have a good week. Might be wrong, might not be. Don't have any data, but it's just something I'm feeling. Richard Bland is another guy who plays well at shorter golf courses if he can stay off the clock and not get penalized for slow play, but that's another story. Anyway, another guy who I think is going to be a super chalky value play in the 7K range is Lowry Cantor, and it's because of his recent form. His last 4 starts on LIV, 23rd, 18th, 19th, and 17th. And his last start overall, 17th at the Open Championship, which was a much tougher field. He was really contending with Henrik Stenson for the low LIV golfer. But I just really like that recent form coming in. I think what everybody's going to do this week when they check their lineups is they're going to click on that player card, see that game log, and just click him right into their lineups. I think he's going to be super popular. So I think it's okay to play him, but just keep in mind you don't want to play all super popular guys. Danny Lee is another guy who I think will be somewhat popular, but it's not because of his recent form. His recent form has actually been pretty bad. He's got 4 finishes on LIV outside the top 30. But he is a winner here at the Greenbrier. He won the 2015 Greenbrier Classic on the PGA Tour. So if you want to go with kind of a contrast of 2 styles there, Lowry Cantor, the recent form king, or Danny Lee, the guy who has won here at this course, I think both those guys are going to get a little bit of traction this week. Heading down into the 6K range, it's honestly pretty ugly. Like I say, for a lot of LIV events, you can avoid this range altogether if you want. But let's go ahead and talk about David Puig real quick. I do believe it's pronounced Puig. When I first saw it, I wanted to say it like Puig, like Yasiel Puig, but I've been told it's Puig. So anyway, been up and down on LIV this season, if we're being totally honest. But he kind of started peaking in May and June, and I wonder if that peak is something he could get back to. He came in 12th at LIV DC, and then at LACC for the U.S. Open, he came in 39th place, which is a really good finish for a young guy who's playing in one of his first majors. And he did a lot of it because of the putter, which normally we talk about putting as a very volatile stat. It's not very sustainable, but he was putting on bent grass greens. They're going to be bent grass greens here this week at the Greenbrier. So the fact that he is a good putter on bent grass greens, I do think plays into his favor. And then he followed that up with a 5th place finish in his native country of Spain at LIV Valderrama. So I do think that's got him in a pretty good spot. I'm willing to forgive the T40 for the Centurion Club at London. It was not a great showing by Puig, but maybe it just didn't fit his game that well. So maybe we can get something going in the right direction for Puig this week. I think he's a 6K guy who's worth looking into. Bubba Watson has not been good this season, at all. He had an 8th place finish at LIV Tulsa and 11th at LIV Adelaide. Those were his only 2 finishes inside the top 20. But he must have some kind of affinity for this golf course. If you did not know, the West Virginia area that the Greenbrier is in had extensive flooding back in 2016. They actually had to cancel the Greenbrier Classic that year. Bubba Watson personally financed a lot of the restorations to kind of help with getting this golf course back on solid ground. And, golfers kind of live paycheck to paycheck. Now, obviously, those paychecks are pretty big. Well, I guess now he's on LIV, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But the fact that he would front a lot of his own money for that project, he must have some kind of affinity for this golf course. And so maybe being back here would give him a little bit of good vibes. And I kind of will be rooting for the guy this week for that reason. Scott Vincent is America's value play. He is a value pretty much every time on LIV because he routinely outperforms his salary. You don't need a whole lot from him, and he seems to always give you that. I don't mind going back to him, but just understand he's probably going to be pretty popular. He always is. The deepest on the board, I would probably go would be Mac Jones. He tends to do his best work at these shorter positional type golf courses, like his T14 at LIV Valderrama. On the PGA Tour, I'm pretty confident that he won a Honda Classic, which is another shorter positional golf course. So I definitely do think the setup is pretty good for Mac Jones. Now, if I'm being totally honest, if you had to nail me down and pick one winner this week, I'm going with Sebastian Munoz. I just think that the way the course sets up, his history here, his recent form coming in, he checks all the boxes. He is my one guy that I would be betting on this week if betting were legal in North Carolina. If you're looking in the team format, I think Torquay would be the team to look into, the Joaquin Niemann, Sebastian Munoz team. They're super motivated. They're one of the leaders in the clubhouse in terms of the LIV standings so far, and I think the course sets up well for 2 or 3 of their guys. So I do think Torquay would be the team you would want to target. All right, that does it for the LIV Greenbrier preview. If you liked all the information that you saw today, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out when you do so. I really do appreciate it. And if you subscribe, you'll be notified when new episodes drop, like our weekly PGA Tour previews, like our LIV previews whenever they have events, like all of our season-long fantasy football content and college football content coming your way also. So if you subscribe, you'll be notified when all of it drops. You like the video, it helps me out a lot, helps the videos get noticed, and I do appreciate it. All right, hopefully I was able to give you guys some good information that you can use to fill out your DFS lineups or fill out your outright betting cards this week. Should be a great weekend to golf with LIV Greenbrier and the Wyndham Championship going on. Check out my preview for the Wyndham Championship if you have not already. It is in the channel feed on YouTube. It's in the audio feed on Spotify and Apple as well. So check that out if you haven't already. I got to give that one a little bit of local knowledge. Had some fun with that one. But anyway, that does it for this preview, guys. Thank you guys for watching or listening. Good luck this week, and I will see you next time.